Singles happen all the time, but not all singles are equal. This Jose Ramirez single in the 6th inning versus the Royals, where the Guardians have a 6-run lead, is nothing too crazy. On the other hand, this Jake Burger single that came in the bottom of the 9th in a tie game in September while the Marlins are making a playoff push has a lot more impact on the season. As the Major League Baseball postseason gets underway here, we are going to see a lot more of these clutch moments. Clutch. That word is thrown around a lot. Is it even real? Can a player even be clutch? Or is it just luck and they just so happen to get hits at the right time? But before we get to that, we need to understand where we're coming from. What is clutch? Well, clutch means to grasp or hold with, or as if with the hand or claws, usually strongly, tightly, or suddenly. Nah, that's the wrong definition. Clutch means made or done in a crucial situation. That sounds a little bit better. It is what it sounds like. When you absolutely need a hit from a batter or an out from a pitcher with the game on the line, they come through. There have been plenty of these throughout history of the sport, from Bill Mazeroski's home run in Game 7 of the 1960 World Series to Jose Bautista's home run against the Texas Rangers in 2016. These were definitely clutch moments. Like we saw with the Jose Ramirez-Jake Burger comparison earlier, one of the plays was just a play you see every day, while the other one had a lot more impact on the game. Is there a way to measure how much impact a play had on the game though? How do we know other than just using the eye test and looking at the play and deciding how much it truly impacted the outcome of the game? Well, the best way to measure it is with win probability added. Win probability added, or WPA, is a stat that can tell you how much each play contributed to the overall outcome of the game. Plays with a high WPA are usually the exciting ones, the walk-offs, the tying hits, the strikeouts with a winning run on third, those kinds of plays. Plays with a low WPA would be things like a 2-out single in an 8-run game in the top of the 8th inning. That play has almost no impact on the outcome of the game. Have you ever seen one of those graphs that show you how likely each team was going to win as the game progressed? This is one for the Pirates vs. Reds on September 23, 2023. The Pirates won this game 13-12, but it was far from a normal win. By the end of the 2nd inning, the Reds were leading 8-0. You don't really have to be a math genius to understand that the win probability for the Pirates is probably pretty low. And it is. At the end of the 2nd inning, the Pirates have a 2% chance of winning. 2 innings is all it took to take them down from 50% to 2%. In the top of the 4th inning, the Pirates went down to a 1% chance of winning. The chances of them scoring 9 runs in 5 innings and not allowing a single run is obviously very low, so the 1% makes sense. They would get 1 run back in the 4th from an Alfonso Rivas single. In the 6th, Ji-hwan Bae and Joshua Palacios would both hit singles and bring in 2 more runs. Then, with 2 outs and 2 runners on, Brian Reynolds hit a 3-run homer to cut the lead to just 3. The Pirates were sitting at a 3% win probability, but after the home run, they were at 10%, making the WPA of that home run 7%, which is pretty significant considering the team was once at 1%. That wasn't the end of it though. Rivas came up again, this time with the bases loaded and down 3, and he cleared the bases with a double, tying the game and pushing the Pirates' win probability to a 61% chance, and the WPA of that hit was 27%. A huge swing to now make the Pirates the favorites to win the game. That was clutch. The Pirates would score 4 more runs in the 8th, but the Reds would rally back and would put the game back to a 50-50 chance in terms of win probability. The Reds went from a 99% chance to win to a 4% chance. Now they battled it back to get it to about 50-50. The tying run was on second with no outs, and Carmen Mlodzinski got Jake Fraley to fly out, causing the tying run to move to third. A sac fly or a dribbler through the infield is all the Reds needed now. Mlodzinski needed a strikeout, and he did just that, striking out Elly De La Cruz to get the 2nd out. Then Jonathan India flew out to end the game. Those 2 plays had a WPA of 42%. Talk about a clutch performance from Carmen Mlodzinski. The largest WPA play this year was the walk-off home run Adam Duvall hit against the Orioles at the start of the season. The Red Sox went from having an 11% chance to win to a 100% chance with that single swing, or a win probability added of 89%. This Patrick Bailey home run is in 2nd with a WPA of 86%. These are obviously clutch plays, but WPA is not a good metric to use to evaluate a player. This is because a 2-run home run in the bottom of the 9th to win the game is treated significantly more valuable than a 2-run home run in the 3rd inning, even though they should hold the same value. Those high WPA plays can obviously be categorized as clutch, but are there certain players that consistently make these plays? Are they clutch players, or are they just good in general and are good in any situation? Can we truly measure how clutch a player is? Luckily, we don't have to look very far to find that answer to that question. Fangraphs has come up with a stat called clutch that tells us how clutch a player has been over a certain time span. Now, if you really care about it, here's the formula, which basically is comparing the WPA a player has accumulated overall at bats compared to the ones in high leverage. LI stands for leverage index, which is basically just a complicated way to quantify how important a situation is to a game. All you need to know is high clutch equals that player is better in high leverage situations than they are on average, and low clutch means that player is worse in high leverage situations than they are on average. So, for example, a player with a 700 OPS overall that has a 900 OPS in high leverage situations would have a higher clutch than a player with an 1000 OPS overall that has a 900 OPS in high leverage situations. You might already be thinking of some flaws with this stat, but we can still use it to determine if players are truly consistently clutch. Here are the top 10 players in terms of how clutch they were in the 2023 season. There are definitely some good players on here, most notably Bryce Harper and Corbin Carroll. Now, we can't really do much with this information, so let's look at the top 10 worst hitters in terms of clutch in 2023. This list has some pretty big names on it, including Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman. But is it repeatable? Are some players just clutch every year? Well, let's look at the top 10 from 2022. Thairo Estrada finds himself at number 9 in the league, but this year he was the 4th worst in the entire league. This is not a good sign for the repeatability of this stat. But this is just one case, so we can't confirm anything yet. A stat like WAR is a good stat to get an overall number on how good a player has been, and the top WAR in the league is usually around 8 for a given season. So if you look at the past 10 years, you would expect the top guys to have around 50 to 60 because they have been near the top of the league for a long time. And when you look at the numbers, that is indeed the case. Mike Trout, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and Jose Altuve are all in that range. They're up there because they have been good players consistently over the past 10 years. So if players are consistently clutch for 10 years, then the top players would be in the low teens through 10 years because the top clutch players usually get around 2 per season. So let's look at the list of the most clutch players in the past 10 years. And as you can see, there is nobody even close to the low teens, and Adam Frazier is in the lead with 5.74. This really says that there are no consistently clutch players over the span of their career in Major League Baseball. There are no players that get this mythical boost in clutch moments and are able to perform better when it matters the most. Even looking at this list of the top 10 clutch players in the past 10 years, most people wouldn't even think of these guys as clutch hitters, so there is no such thing as a clutch hitter, but is there such thing as a clutch pitcher? Well, no, not really, as it turns out to be relatively similar to the hitters leaderboard. Jon Lester does stick out at the top of the list, but that is only one player and could be considered an outlier. This proves that nobody gets significantly better during high leverage situations, but the problem with this clutch statistic is it compares the player's clutch performance to the player's overall performance. So if the player is good overall, then he would have to put up insane numbers in the clutch to be considered a clutch player using this metric. Dismissing the whole clutch player narrative is kind of depressing, so let's look back at some of the best performers in important situations in 2023. To do this, I have filtered out all plate appearances to only include ones with runners in scoring position in a mid to high leverage moment according to Fangraph's leverage metric. 3 players stand out above the rest when you look at WRC+. WRC+ just looks at how much a player is producing at the plate and how good or bad they have done in creating runs. We all know who Yordan Alvarez is, and it's not really a surprise to see him atop of any hitting leaderboard, but the other 2 names are not in the same boat. Royce Lewis quietly has had one of the better years in the league, albeit in a small sample size of 58 games, but he was even better when it mattered the most. He is a 155 WRC+ overall and a 249 in important situations. If you were following the postseason, you would know the Twins got their first postseason win in 18 years off of 2 Royce Lewis homers, which cements his name further into the, well, I'm not going to say clutch player, but he's performed well in clutch situations this year. The same thing can be said with Nolan Jones. I imagine not a lot of people other than Rockies fans watched too many Rockies games this year, but Nolan Jones was one of the best hitters on the team, especially in big-time moments. Jones hit over 400 in these situations, which is obviously very good. He had a WRC+ of 238 in these same situations, which is also very good. These 2 examples are probably a coincidence and more luck-based than Jones and Lewis turning into superstars all of a sudden when there are runners in scoring position. They aren't clutch players, but it's still fun to look at their performance in the big moments. So what can we conclude from all this? Well, clutch moments are definitely a thing, and we've seen a lot of them, but clutch players just don't exist in baseball. Nobody's consistently better in the clutch than they are in any other time. When it comes to evaluating a player, it would not be a good idea to compare a player to another player based on their stats with runners in scoring position. We've seen that these clutch stats aren't really replicable over multiple seasons, making it a bad idea to evaluate a player using these stats. While that is kind of a boring conclusion, it is what it is. There's no such thing as a clutch player.